This is Owen and Mia's memoir podcast. So, talking about the recent AP test, how do you feel it went for you?
Me personally, I think the AP test was pretty easy, and I know that it's nothing's really easy. You're just prepared.
You're prepared?
So I definitely think that I was really prepared for this test.
I think so too. Basically, I don't think there was a single question that wasn't on there that I couldn't answer, but I was surprised. I thought there would be more content on 1900s to present, but there wasn't much talk about World War I, II, or the Cold War.
Oh yeah, that's true. I'm really glad when I was studying that I paid attention to the weighting of the stuff, because I mostly studied unit 3 and 4, and then that was what the majority of the test was.
Mm-hmm. I think it was beneficial. I don't know if you saw it. There was that prediction of what the LEQ would be on. So I think just hearing other opinions about how their studying has been going is just helpful for my own studying.
Yeah.
I didn't really ramp up my studying until a couple weeks before, and I think for my way of learning, I actually do find benefit in cramming. I think I have a good enough memory that if I repeat it a couple times the day before, it will stick. Mm-hmm. So I think if I had tried to start memorizing a little bit further in advance, I don't think I would have done as good as I did on the test as I did.
Yeah. And I think I was pretty locked in during the year that I didn't have to study that much when it came to May and before the test. Mm-hmm. And then I think you said the repetition of content. So once I learned it once, and then it kept getting repeated, I could use it in new contexts. That was, I think, the best thing that helped me review.
Yeah, I really liked how we compared policies of different things, because it kind of got you in the mindset of the differences between how the states functioned. Mm-hmm. Because if you just focus on tracking China throughout its whole course, and then separately you track Europe, it's it doesn't give you the whole context of how they interacted with each other. But when we did the Soviet Union versus the Chinese communism, that mm-hmm. gets you in the understanding how this at the same time period two different states were working in different ways, and how that affected the whole global history.
Especially since WAP was so broad.
Mm-hmm.
I feel I really like that, because then we got to learn about a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
But then sometimes it kind of annoyed me, because we just touch on one thing, and then all of a sudden we'd have to move on, even if it seemed more interesting.
Just the weightings of some things, and because we're talking a lot about how the different countries interacted, we didn't get to talk a lot about the intricacies. We talked about the war, proxy wars during the Cold War. We didn't really touch much on the space race, or scientific developments that happened because of the Cold War,
or what was happening individually with each country's peoples.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about communism a little, and the peasants, but I feel we didn't focus on more interesting stuff, the daily life of someone living in that.
Mm-hmm. As far as just overall studying went, I think it was definitely beneficial having the readings, and I liked the class structure of how everything we talked about in class was based off of the readings, because if we were expected to do more of the readings in class, we just wouldn't have as much time to dissect everything.
Yeah.
And it can be tough to have that expectation that you need to do the readings to know what's going on in the class, but it just allows a lot more time to study and just repetition of the concepts in your head. So it was definitely a change from what I'm used to, but it was nice.
And I really liked how we did them before,
mm-hmm.
and then we talked about it later, because I know for myself, if we had learned about something in class and then there was a reading assigned that night about the same thing, I totally wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
So we're oh, I already know what this is.
I really noticed this was the first year I recognized the importance of writing down
mm-hmm.
to memorize, because for the most part of every reading I did, I took to some degree notes of everything that happened, and it was really useful going back and studying for tests. But the very last couple readings, the really long 20 page stuff on Green Revolution, I didn't take any notes. I just skimmed through the pages, and I don't think I retained basically anything from that. I really recognize the importance of writing things down, and I think taking, especially for history type of classes where you need to memorize events and facts, I think that's a really useful skill.
Yeah, and like I took notes before, but I feel like before I didn't really know how to like study and then like know like the key information. But I feel like for WAP I really got better at like determining like what I really needed to know, and then like writing just the important stuff down.
Yeah.
And then in that like same vein, like I'm glad I like participated a lot in class because, and then we had like so many activities that like it was like turn and talk or like think about this.
Yeah.
Because like that also helps like review what we read the previous night and then like solidify what we learned.
I'm kind of upset that I didn't talk as much as I could have, because there's definitely benefit in like conversation, even if you give the wrong answer or something that's not as important. Like if we were talking about what are the motivations for the wars, and if I'd given a wrong answer, that would have helped me even more than if I'd given the right answer, because you get to know like what has more weight than others. So I feel like I was too scared in the class to say something in the event that it was wrong, but I think I should have just been more comfortable with saying what was on my mind so that I could grow individually and also help the class.
I agree. And then another thing I think I got better at was like reading and interpreting stuff for sure. Cause like I remember that like quiz we took at the beginning, and it was like that really hard one.
Yeah.
Like I feel like in that there's like the paragraph like Mansa Musa or whatever, and I had no idea what any of it meant because it was all in like weird language, and then it's like hard to like interpret the meaning. But then like slowly throughout WAP, like on the DBQs, I like read the document once, I like immediately like, could connect it to something or like know like the truth, like the meaning behind it. So I really like I'm really like glad that I built that skill.
Yeah, doing so many of the multiple choice in DBQs, just seeing the types of questions they ask really helped me hone in on what kind of information I need to be focusing on during the readings too.
Yeah.
Because
like I think over time I knew like what the question was at, like what they want from the question, especially the ones that would like the best answer. Because like I was able to like step, like when I was like taking the test, like what I would do is like step back and be like, okay, like what would someone in College Board who's writing this question, like what would they try to do to trick people up, and then like what would the answer be, like what would they have the answer be?
That's what I really struggled with on the practice MCQs that we did through College Board. I was like too hyper focused on the specific details that I like skipped stupid things. Like one of them was on Nazi Germany, and the time period was just completely wrong from the answer. It talked about, actually it wasn't Nazi Germany, one of the answers was like the camps and the concentration camps, but the time period in the question was before the Holocaust. So just stepping back and thinking about the general answer to the question instead of the specifics kind of helped me on the test, because I was a little bit more comfortable with not worrying about every single intricate answer.
Yeah. And I think like going forward to like other APs too, like being able to do that like process of elimination and all like the other tactics that we learned is going to be really helpful.
I agree. How was your study? Like, how did you balance studying with your extracurriculars, especially in like this track season?
Oh yeah. Well, I definitely made sure to like do them whenever I could. So, like I'd think about, like I'd list out everything I had to do, and then I got good at like estimating like, okay, like this reading is like 10 pages, so it's going to take me like 25 minutes maybe to take the notes. So, like I was able to time block them and adjust to it.
I struggled because I like to procrastinate, and so when we had those larger chunks of reading, I was losing sleep because I would always do my readings the night before the B days. I feel like it would have been more beneficial, or it was nice on the rare occasions when I would do it the day the homework was assigned, because then I have less stress, and even if I don't fully complete the reading, I still have one more day to do a little bit less.
Yeah.
So I think getting into that habit of being one day ahead of your homework, just it's a big relief because you don't have to worry about so much. And even though the work is the same, I think schoolwork feels a little bit more achievable. So
yeah. And like at first with doing the readings, it was hard to like put everything else aside and then like open the textbook and really just get like locked into it and like in the zone. But like slowly over time, like I was able to like I'd do other homework and then I'd like do the reading, and then I'd be more focused, which I really like that. Like or like I'd do the reading and then I'd do like my APR history homework, and it would be like I'd be more focused in
just
both
like
of them.
being in the sense of like getting your homework done helped you be more productive. I played a lot of lo-fi music when I was reading, and I know you're not necessarily like supposed to be like listening or like eating or drinking when you're homework, because like it just makes you reliant. But the music I put on was actually really helpful because of what you said. I would usually do WAP separate from my other homework because like the styles of my homework were so different. It was harder for me to like do them back to back. But putting on that music kind of made it quicker to get into that studying mindset.
Yeah.
Because was for art history, was it for most of the same stuff?
Yeah, it was really similar. Like, I remember we would like talk about like the Protestant Reformation or something in our history, and then like the day after we talk about it in WAP or like the Renaissance.
That's nice.
So yeah, it really helped for the context and building on that. And then, so like in that like kind of like challenge, what did you think about the pace of it?
Okay. I think definitely that last unit was rushed. So I feel like we could have spent a little bit more time on it, but seeing as how there was basically no questions on it on the test, I think it was good because leading up to the test, I was really worried about how little we had focused on those last couple readings, but I was pleasantly surprised when there wasn't so much. But for the rest of it, I think while I was in the middle of like large study blocks, it did seem like it was a lot and it was fast-paced. But stepping back, I realized it was slower than it could have been. It could have been a lot worse if we breezed through and they were talking about so much more stuff. And I think it's nice. Yes, I'm like upset that we didn't get to talk as much about the details, but if we had, that just would have made the pacing of the class so much more.
Yeah. Like, I wish we had, like, AP Euro or something that we could, like, dive, like, more in on, like, a certain part in history, but overall, I actually really liked the pacing of lab. Like, I feel like it was a perfect mix of being, like kind of challenging, but then also, like, we didn't spend too much time and I got really bored on, like, one certain thing. And I like having the tests every unit. Like, I think they were evenly spread out, which was great.
It was also nice having the tests on every unit because it's like the very beginning of studying for the end of the year exam, because it forced you to go back and look at all of your notes for the unit, and then you could pick out the important parts and that would stick with you. Like, I was really locked in on like the technologies in the Indian Ocean trade networks because I'd studied so hard for that on our unit test that I didn't even have to study them. They were just like ingrained in my brain when it came around to studying for the final exam.
Yeah, like I don't think I'll ever forget like camels and Zanzibar and like all the stuff that was traded on the Silk Road, or like the dhows, because that's just like I remember I was freaking out over like the short answer and having to like study really hard for that.
I think that kind of comes back to what I was talking about comparing things that were happening at the same time. Because I think the things that I remember the most are those trade networks and then like communism, because we were doing so much about what was similar and what was different between them, like the diaspora communities and like the different modes of transportation, how they were the same but also different. I think just that comparison gets you into the mindset of picking out what was important about each unit. So that was nice.
And to like the impact, like this was traded and then like this country became prosperous. Like I really liked when we'd go through like the how something would happen, like the rise of the gunpowder empires and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So What do you think was like the hardest part about it? About lab?
I think for me the hardest part was just not knowing exactly what was going to be on like tests and stuff, because in other classes like math class, everything that's on the test is what we've studied for, and we like learn how to go through the motions to be prepared for anything that comes along. But when it comes to a type of class like history, there's just so much, and you're not being tested on every single thing, that it's kind of up to you to know what's important to know and what's less important. And I think it put more stress on me than I expected, because it seemed like so much that I had to memorize, but in the reality it's only reasonable to memorize a certain fraction instead of every single thing that we learned.
I think for me, okay, it was like kind of the same about not knowing, but then another thing was that it's kind of like opposite to what you said. I think I had to like be okay with like, yeah, it's the same, not knowing like everything that we were doing. Like sometimes it felt like we'd like learn about random things that were happening like during that time period instead of like each individual detail. So I had to be okay with like, I guess, jumping back and forth from like this place to this place in the one time period, and then like not knowing everything about like a certain place during that time period, and having to like only focus on the important things, like if I wanted to like I don't know, but
yeah. I'm curious, if you were to take the class again, what would you change about your approach?
I don't know. I feel like I really like the way that I approached it. I would definitely, one, participate more in class, and then two, I'd probably try to lock in on the readings more, because like while I did them every night, I feel like I could have maybe read them read them once and then like went back and took notes instead of like reading them and taking notes at the same time, or like doing something like that.
I think that I would have a lot of benefit like having a group of people to just study, like where it would be easy to just say, hey, can I come over to your house for an hour, and we just like talk about what we remember and help each other. Because in the couple times that I did talk through like the units with other people, especially when we had lunch right before the exam, it sparked up a lot more than I realized that I knew. And so I think, especially for like US history next year, if I find people, it's nice being able to drive, but if I find people that I can just hang out with for an hour or so every day, I think that would really help my studying and my success in the class.
Yeah, and to like connect it more with other stuff that we were doing, because I feel like okay, back to AP Art History, like when I was able to connect like what I learned from each like different class, it helped me build on my knowledge more, and I just felt like I had a better grasp over everything. And like I remember in like the week before the test, like a few days before, everyone was like freaking out, and like in all my classes like we'd be talking about lab, and then that would like, I feel like that's one of the things also that really helped me right before the test, that everyone was so like collaborative and like collectively studying.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Alrighty.
What was your favorite unit?
Oh, that is a good question. I'm kind of blanking right now.
I know.
So wait, first and second units were about like empires and their trade networks.
Yeah.
I like the trade.
That was a good unit.
Like I talked about before.
I really like that.
3 and 4 were about the land-based. And
I didn't really like 3 and
empires.
4. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't like the sea-based empires that much.
No. I feel like once you get further into the units, as they become more recent, there's more that you already knew about history. Like I already knew about the British East India Company, and I didn't know.
Revolution.
Yeah, I didn't know the exact events and people, but I was already familiar with that. But it was really cool learning about those earlier civilizations and how they got along.
Yeah.
So I guess I'd have to go with Unit 2.
Yeah, I think for me it's a tie between Unit 2 and Unit 8 because I actually really like learning about like the communism and I actually didn't know about the proxy wars before or about like Mao, and I actually really like learning about Mao and like the like leadership shift in China. That was pretty interesting.
I also enjoyed learning about the communism and other forms of government and economic policies because we're just so used to like a capitalist country that it's sometimes hard to pick out the pros and cons of the type of economy we're in. And so when you're exposed to these other types, it helps you learn more about like your values and what you like and what you don't like about leadership and how the world is run. And it's also like just good to know about how like leadership can become corrupt because you know what to look out for because history is pretty good at repeating itself. So.
And it was cool to like see like I guess just different cultures and how they responded to different things, like how like the different cultures responded to like the bubonic plague and all that. Like I thought that was cool too. So yeah, either Unit 2 or Unit 8. And I remember I feel like those were the two that I was really locked in on the most. So I probably remember the most from those.
That makes sense. Alrighty. Do you have anything else?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Perfect. Well,
Well,
that is our end of the year AP World History memoir.
yeah.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.